Om Aganati Marandashyangana Gana Sarakya Chaksurun Miritam Yana Tashmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yana Bhutale Marandashyangana Gana Sarakya Chaksurun Miritam Yarati Swaparantikam Vandeham Siguru Siyata Parakamaram Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sta Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savirutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Larita Shrivishikan Vitam Sha Nama Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Pistaya Bhutare Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sunyavadi Praskata Deyasatari Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinu Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radhikanta Namostute Jayatam Surato Pango Mama Manir Matergati Matsavasha Paramboja Radhana Madana Mohan Sriman Rasarasarambi Vamsiva Karsan Vener Shero Peter Gopinata Siryasanam Divyad Vindaranya Kapadrumada Srimad Radhagana Shima Shanishto Shri Shri Radha Shira Govinda Deva Prastadabi Seva Manush Marami Namo Brahmanya Devaya Go Brahmani Taya Cha Jigari Taya Krishnaya Govindaya Namo Namaha Mangalang Bhagavan Vishnu Mangalam Guru Rajaja Mangalam Paniti Kaksho Mangarayatano Hari Om Narayanaya Vidmihi Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Prachodhyate Om Mahadevi Cha Vidmihi Vishnu Padniti Dhimahi Tano Lakshmi Prachodhyate Mahalakshmi Namastubhyam Saresari Hari Pare Namastubhyam Dharadire Tapti Kanchana Gaurangi Radhavin Navaneshwari Vishavanasute Devi Pranamani Hari Priya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Hare Hare Welcome to the 23rd segment 23rd revisitation of the 19th verse 8th chapter, first canto of the Bhagavatam, Maya Javani Karadam, Agyanada Dukshada Avyayam, Nadukashe Madham Dishta, Natya Nachadara Sharam. Krishna is described by Queen Kunti as being beyond the range of our material limited sense perception, the eternally irreproachable factor covered by the curtain of Mahamaya or Yogamaya, depending on what your orientation to God is, to the foolish observer covered by Mahamaya. You are invisible, just as an actor dressed and playing a role on the stage is not recognized. So many profound truths we're getting churned out of this verse that we've set all of our records, smashed all of our previous records. 23 45-minute sessions. There's a book in there somewhere if I live long enough and get the right karma to transpose speech into the written word. We talked yesterday about how Sisupal came to a point of immense frustration. He had a crush on Rukmini. Not only did he have a crush on Rukmini, but he had a channel. He thought he had a channel of access to Rukmini. He had made friends with Rukmini's brother, Rukmi, and gone so far as to arrange through Rukmi the marriage of himself to Rukmini. And everything went as planned. He was so excited. The big day arrived. Rukmini stopped on her way to the marriage dais where he was eagerly waiting. She stopped at the Durga temple to ask Durga actually if she could marry Krishna instead. She'd already sent a message to Krishna asking him to kidnap her. So between the Durga temple and the Kalya Mandap, the arena where Sisupal was to give his hand in marriage to Rukmini, she was whisked away. All the soldiers, the warriors, the chariot drivers, the elephant drivers had all fallen on the ground, being smitten by the supernatural beauty of Rukmini. And so it was an easy matter for Krishna to get her to step up on his chariot, and they began driving away. When the soldiers recovered, there was a running bow battle, a running arrow battle, as opposed to a gun battle, in which the non-Krishna devotees got the worst of it. Sisupal didn't even give chase, sat there crying, feeling pity for himself. And the warriors desisted. They let Krishna and Rukmini go, which was actually, incidentally, that desire of, although Bhishmaka, the father of Rukmini, had agreed to get Rukmini married to Sisupal, he wasn't too happy about that. It was under pressure from his son and from Sisupal. So Bhismaka, the father of Rukmini, was also hoping that Krishna would do just exactly what he ended up doing. And there was a great, wonderful marriage ceremony between Rukmini and Krishna. Most people in the world were delighted that the goddess of fortune has been reunited with her eternal Lord Narayan. There were only a few people who were not happy, Jarasandha, Sisupal, and others. But Jarasandha and the other friends of Sisupal, although they weren't God-centered, they were self-centered, still eventually from time to time come up with some really, really good, solid spiritual advice. So the friends of Sisupal consoled him. They said, don't be disappointed by this temporary reversal. After all, you're a warrior, and warriors are supposed to be able to take extremes of hot and cold, honor and dishonor, happiness and distress, pain and pleasure. The warrior is ready to lay down his life on the battlefield. And you can imagine how agonizing that would be, having received a sword cut or having an arrow puncture into your torso. It's a long, agonizing death, but the warriors were trained for that. Very stoic, very Spartan. In fact, even during the Mahabharata description of the Kurukshetra war, describes how many warriors continued fighting even after having been penetrated by multiple arrows. And they would apparently have such good physicians that they would go back to the camp at night and be completely healed, ready to go again at it in the morning. So the warriors, if nothing else, they were used to pain. And they also compensated. They were rewarded for accepting excessive amounts of pain by, they were given latitude for pleasures that most ordinary people were prohibited from tasting. Kshatriyas would have more than one wife. There was license because they had to be sharp in the military skills to curb the miscreants. They were allowed to hunt deer in the forest. They were sometimes engaged in gambling. There was some latitude in the four regular principles for the warriors. They were given a little extra material pleasure because every day their lives were laid on the line. So pleasure and pain should be, the associates of Sisupal are saying, hey, come on, hey, snap out of this. This is not becoming. Anarya Shishtam Akirtam God. This kind of thinking, this kind of self-pity, this moaning, this lamentation is not suitable for a Kshatriya. You're a powerful, strong warrior, so get up and get your act together. They resorted to flattery in the end. They said to Sisupal, after all, without naming Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they did recognize that there is a supreme power, a supreme controller, and they called it fate, or they called it providence. They said, according to fate, according to providence, we suffer distress or happiness. Alternatively, there's no life completely happy filled. There's no life completely distress filled. Tasaiva heto priyate kuvira nalabyate talabyate dukapadanyata shukam kalena sarvatu gabhira ramasha. It is said in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam that just as distress comes without our asking for it, anxiety, stress, accidents, illnesses, broken arms, broken legs, it comes, we don't pray, please, Lord, let the lab results come back from my last doctor's visit positive for cancer. Nobody prays like that. In fact, we do everything we can to avoid that. If you try to live a healthy lifestyle, you stay active, you eat well, you try to do everything you can to avoid getting cancer. And yet cancer comes. Road accidents come, sports accidents come, COVID comes. Many, many things come to us without our asking for them. We don't want them, and yet they come anyway. So this verse says, the advice that Sisupal's friends gave to him were that just like distress comes to you, and right now you're distressed, distress came to you big time, you got disappointed, you didn't get to marry the girl of your dreams, that qualifies as distress. You're feeling lamentation. You're feeling that you lost something that you never even had in the first place. It's one thing to have it and to lose it and then lament, but it's another thing to think you have it and then realize you never had it, and then you lament. That's really like chasing the wind. So, but the friend said, buck up, put on a better attitude, because just like distress comes without your asking for it, happiness will also come. You didn't see this coming. You didn't see this kidnapping coming. It took you by surprise. But there's happiness also on its way, which you also don't see coming. Right now, you may think your future is all dark. You'll never be happy again. But there is happiness on the way. Just like distress came, blindsiding you, taking you by surprise. You didn't see it coming. So right now, though you don't see happiness coming, it is coming. How do I know? How can we tell you that? Because those are the laws of nature. That's the material world. This material world is a world of duality, twos. That means if you're feeling happy, then you can be pretty much count on the fact that distress will follow in the fields of happiness. If you're in a trough and you're a downtime, if you're in a valley as opposed to a mountaintop, I predict that you'll end up having some sort of a rush, a wave of happiness coming from left field. So don't think that happiness is eternal. Don't think that distress is eternal. That's our problem. When we're on a high, we think it's going to last forever. When we're on a low, we think it's going to last forever. They're both temporary. So just sit it out, buck up, grin and bear it. There is happiness in your future. This is the very, very wise advice that the associates of Sister Paul gave to him. The Lord is in control of everything, and he plays with us just like the puppeteer plays with the puppets on the string. We may have our plans, but Krishna or God or the Supreme, whatever you want to call him, has his plans. Kamsa planned in so many ways to kill Krishna, and yet not one of Kamsa's plans panned out, but one single plan of Krishna to kill Kamsa worked exactly according to predictions. Sisupal later on was a guest in the arena of the Rajasuya sacrifice of Mars Yudhisthira. Sisupal had burned with anger and envy ever since he had been placed on the lap of Krishna, and his third eye and his two arms, extra arms, had fallen off. He had known that Krishna would be his killer. And so from his very childhood, he was thinking of ways to minimize Krishna, to take Krishna off the board, to neutralize Krishna. Because Krishna was his death. Mritu Sarvaharasya. Krishna says, I am death. Particularly, Sisupal had that realization in the forefront of his consciousness. So he was always burning with thoughts of Krishna in enmity. Now, the backstory, as you know, of course, is that Sisupal and Dantavaka were, in a former life, the doorkeepers of Krishna in Vaikuntha. They had a little difference of opinion with 4 sages called the Kumaras. The Kumaras cursed them to take birth in the material world. No sooner had the Kumaras cursed Jai and Vijay to take birth in the material world than Lord Vishnu appeared on the scene as a mediator, and the Kumaras were already thinking that maybe they'd overreacted. They were feeling a little regretful, and Krishna said, no, don't worry. First of all, we would never knowingly offend pure devotees like this. This was totally unintentional on the part of Jai and Vijay, but there's a backstory, and that is that I wanted to happen. This is all happening by my arrangement. I wanted these 2 servants of mine, dedicated, loyal servants, to go to the material world, and I want them to be in the position of my enemies. Krishna is not, he gets tired of the hosannas and hallelujahs and all the fawning. Once in a while, he wants someone to oppose him. Once in a while, he wants to be challenged and chastised. And so he makes an arrangement in the material world that some of his devotees appear and play the role of demons. Just like Krishna is playing so many roles, he can also empower his devotees to descend to the material world and play roles as his antagonists. When you were kids, there might have been a bunch of you in the neighborhood, and sometimes to make the play a little more interesting, a little more dramatic and suspenseful, you would divide up into cowboys and Indians, cops or robbers. Some would play the role of the bad guys, some would play the role of the good guys. That just made it so much more interesting. So Sisupal is actually a devotee of Krishna from a previous life. The cursing of Sisupal and Dantavakra by the four Kumaras was according to the arrangement of the Lord, so that he could enjoy fighting with him. He could enjoy competitive sports with him. And as far as they were concerned, they wanted to return to Krishna as soon as possible. And so when they were offered the choice between 7 versus devotees or 3 versus demons, they chose 3 versus demons because 3 is quicker than 7. They would more quickly return to the spiritual world. And they were blessed with constant meditation of Krishna in anger, in enmity. It says, Yata Bhayaradabhanira Marjastama Natate but iti me nishtambati. Narada Muni muses. He's thinking out loud. When he thinks of the constant meditation on Krishna by Kamsa, by Sisupal, by Dantavakra, he's thinking, this spice, this element of envy really takes their thoughts of Krishna to a 24/7 level. Of course, we want to think of Krishna favorably. We want to serve Krishna and not to try to compete with Krishna. But anyway, this is what Krishna wanted in this particular case. He wanted the competition, but no ordinary mortal is capable of contending with the Supreme Lord. And so he chose his devotees, who are especially empowered at all times to serve him under whatever roles or guises that the Lord should choose, and according to their own proclivities and temperaments. So it is said, so Krishna said to the four Kama, Eto Sarata Gatim Pradipadi Sara Samreda Sambadi Buyosha Gisham Upaya Shara Shapo Mayava Nibatashta Devita Repra. He said, these servants of mine will take 3 births in the material world, and they will be 100% Krishna conscious. They will be thinking of me all the time as cruel death. And there won't be a single moment in a single day when they ever forget me. And after those 3 births as demons in full Krishna consciousness, they will come back to home, back to God. The example, Hita Prasheshkadara Kudyam Sambaramaya Vindite Tat Sarupatham. Example is given of this consciousness on the part of Sisupal, Dantavakra. In a previous life, they were Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksha. In the 3rd life, they were Ravana and Kumbhakarna. So there's a little worm that lives in a borehole of a tree. And that worm is food for a particular type of wasp. So the wasp makes its body small and inserts itself into that borehole. The wasp is coming closer and closer and closer to that worm. So that worm sees the wasp in the moments before its death as its worst enemy. So at the time of being killed by the wasp, that worm is fully conscious of the wasp in enmity and in fear. You know what happens? Because of concentrating on the wasp, the last moments of its life, it takes its next birth as a wasp. So the blessing upon Sisupal, Dantavakra, Ravana, Kumbhakarna, Kamsa, and not Kamsa, Dantavakra, and others was that Hiranyakashipu, they will think of Krishna as cruel death, just like that little worm thinks of the wasp. And thinking of Krishna as cruel death, at the end of 3 verses, they will get liberation. They will go back to home, back to God. So here we go back to the scene. The scene is set. It's a Rajasuya sacrifice. All the kings of the world are sitting in the arena, and it's time to nominate the Purusha, the first person, the greatest, most exalted person. So Sahadev stands up and he says, I nominate Krishna. And there's a great, yeah, everyone pretty much agrees, except for Sisupal. This is a chance for Sisupal to vent. Now, a management principle, if you're a manager, you know the first thing you do is, if you want to criticize an employee, do it privately. Don't call anyone to task in front of their peers. It is the worst type of humiliation. Sisupal consciously ignored this. He didn't care. He wanted to cause as much willful pain and hurt to Krishna as it was possible to do. So in front of everybody who was anybody, in front of all the kings of the world, he stands up and he starts hurling insults at Krishna, one after another. Nobody knows whether he's a Vaishya or a Sudra. He's dark complected. Therefore, he's not as good as other genetic makeups. So all the racism and everything came out that was latent in Sisupal. He says he kidnapped my wife, lady who was betrothed to me, arranged, blessed. The marriage was blessed by her father and brother, and he didn't respect that. He came just like a jackal stealing butter from the fire, stole my fiance away from me. Went on and on and on. You remember from yesterday that knowing Krishna would be the future killer of her son, Sisupal's mother, who was Krishna's father's sister, in other words, aunt of Krishna, had asked Krishna, though my son insult you 100 times, please don't kill him. So Sisupal stood up and in the most public way and using the most vile words, started insulting Krishna in front of everybody. So various people stood up. Bhima stood up. Others stood up. They were going to kill Sisupal. But Krishna raised his hand very mildly. By his gestures, he asked them to stand down, to let Sisupal continue. Sisupal went on unchecked. He was a minority. He was one of only a few people who had held those opinions. And usually it's the majority that gets to speak and not the minority. The minority speaks less time, the majority speaks more time. But Krishna counteracted that. Sisupal went on and on and on. He insulted Krishna 20 times, got up to 30, got up to 50, got up to 70, got up to 80, got up to 90, got up to 100. And then when he delivered his 101st insult, and Krishna, having fulfilled his promise to Sisupal's mother, invoked his razor-sharp Sudarshan chakra, and whoosh. So you might say Sisupal got so much carried away that he lost his head right in front of everybody. He was decapitated in front of all of his peers, his well-wishers, cousin brothers, and so on. And in front of everybody, as they watched the soul of Sisupal leave his body, it merged into Krishna. Sisupal had seen Krishna not as a supreme personality of Godhead, but in his rage, being covered by Krishna's illusory energy. Sisupal, when he looked at Krishna, he saw a glaring, shining effulgence, a shining light. He didn't have that sweet, intimate, loving, personal relationship with Krishna in that lifetime. His relationship with Krishna was as an enemy. And so the enemies don't get to assume their spiritual forms at the time of liberation. So in a spark-like, in a particle-like form, the soul of Sisupal, before everybody's eyes, exited the body and went into the body of Krishna. Krishna is called Narayana. That means that source from which all living beings come. We manifest ourselves in this material world at the creation of this cosmic manifestation from the abdomen of Narayan. Just like the filaments of the spider's web manifest themselves, they're spun out from the abdomen of the spider. Similarly, we're all manifested from the abdomen of Narayana. That's what Narayana means. He who gives birth to all the living beings. And at the end of the cosmic manifestation, those who are not liberated, who are not pure in devotional service, their materialistic activities are interrupted, and they are then again taken back into the womb of Narayan to sleep for the period of cosmic manifestation, to only be impregnated within the next creation and to resume their materialist activities where they left off, where they've been interrupted at the time of cosmic dissolution. They recollect their activities, they get a suitable body to continue pursuing their material desires and goals. So just like when you go to sleep at night, generally the last thought in your mind before you go to sleep is going to be the first thought when you wake up. So Sisupal did not get Siddhaswarup. He did not get his full spiritually manifested mature body, but he did get to merge. He did get a kind of a liberation into the body of the Lord. Now, what impersonalists and enemies of the Lord generally have in common with each other is that they think that Krishna has a material temporary form, that Krishna assumes a form for the purpose of his pastimes, maintains that form and displays that form for the duration of his pastimes. And then when Krishna leaves, he leaves that form behind, just like an ordinary living being. And in fact, to satisfy those kinds of misconceptions, Krishna appeared to have taken birth through the womb of Devaki at the beginning of his manifested pastimes, and he appeared to have left a material body at the time of quitting these manifested pastimes and going back to the spiritual world. So the asuras, like on the level of Sisupal, think that Krishna had no form or personality before having appeared to the womb of Devaki, and then after leaving a material body behind, their supposition is that Krishna is no longer existent. Just like the foolish audience, they see a musician may go into a box, he may be cut to pieces, he may be burned to ashes, and they think, oh, the musician is no longer, he's no longer there. He's died, he's been cut to pieces, he's been burned to ashes, he's no longer there, he's no longer existent. But the musician is not only is he still existent, not only is he still intact, but what you've seen has simply been the handiwork of his illusory powers. So not only is the musician still intact, but he himself has not lost anything in the course of plying his trade. He knows how to create the illusion of death or dismemberment or being burned to ashes without any diminution of his own energy. It's what he does. It's what he does. He's good at it, you see. If he wasn't good at it, you wouldn't be thinking that he's burned to ashes. You wouldn't be thinking that he's dead. So he's good at it. It's his profession. And so similarly, the musician creates these illusions, and not only is he not affected by it, he's still living, although he's made a show of being killed or dying. He's still living, he's still fine, but he's not in any way diminished. In fact, if anything, you could say he'd be enhanced, he'd be more appreciated, he'd be more well paid because of the successful plying of his various illusions. But the whole success of the magician depends on the audience not knowing what he's doing or how he's doing it. If the audience knew what he was doing, then they wouldn't pay tickets to see his show. So similarly, the audience, that's us, living beings in this material world, even including great sages, demigods like Lord Shiva and Brahma, we have no clue how Krishna does what he does, how he can appear through the womb of Devaki, how he can engage himself with devotees like the Pandavas and like Queen Kunti and Yashoda and Vasudeva and Devaki, all the inhabitants of Vrindavan, the younger cowherd boys, the cowherd boys that are his age, the older members of the community, the gopis, the cowherd maidens, so many relationships in which Krishna is fully committed, we cannot even begin to understand. Therefore, he's often described as a musician, as a player on the stage, as an actor. He's able to create these roles. He's able to appear and disappear at will. And he himself is totally unaffected by any of that role play, by any of that acting. Although the materialistic people think that he is affected, that he does have a time of beginning, that he has a time of duration, that he has a time of cessation. This way, they bring Krishna down to their own level of understanding. They apply their own limited conceptualization to what Krishna can do or cannot do. It appeared during Rama's exile in the forest that Ravana was able to lure Ram away through the wiles, the conjuring of Maricha, to trick Lakshman into following the so-called voice of Ram, calling for help, and then to grab Sita, to lay his hands on Sita, to force her onto his chariot, take her to his city of Sri Lanka and hold her captive for 1 year. That's the official story. That's the official version. But later on, when Sita was finally rescued after 1 year, her fidelity was called into question. She voluntarily entered into fire. She said, if I have even once thought of Ravana, if I have even for a moment entertained the idea of capitulating to Ravana, then let me be burned to ashes in this fire. And not only should she not burn to ashes in the fire, but Agni, the fire god himself, who is a symbol of purity, came out escorting Sita, and Agni said, this lady is completely pure. Though she lived in the house of another man for 1 year, she always thought of Ram. She always waited expectantly for Ram to come and to rescue her. Then it's revealed that Sita who came out of the fire was the real Sita. The Sita who had been captured and kidnapped and held captive by Ravana was a Maya Sita, was a false Sita. That the real Sita, no Ravana could lay hands on her. The real Sita was evasive. The real Sita was beyond the ability of the contaminated senses of Ravana to touch or even to perceive. So similarly, Krishna appears to appear. He enacts his pastimes. He reciprocates with all kinds of devotees according to the particular quality of their affection for him. And then he disappears, leaving a body behind. And all this is like the tricks of a magician to satisfy the misconceptions of the materialistic minded people. Just like there's a Maya Sita, there was a Maya body that Krishna left behind. The absolute truth is, factually speaking, eternal. He has an unborn, unchanging, infallible body, but he plays with the materialistic just like a cat plays with a mouse. He produces bodies according to their misconceptions. He provides fodder for their bogus philosophies. So this material world itself has certain validity. The people along the lines of Sisupal who would minimize the validity of the Lord, who would discount material nature because it's temporary, Krishna is putting them on notice that Krishna can use matter for spiritual purposes. Krishna does not become suborned. Krishna, the supreme absolute truth, does not become conditioned when he enters into the material world. He is the controller of matter as well as the controller of spirit. Example is given that the expert electrician can use electricity to heat or to cool. He can use it in both those dual ways. So Krishna's energy is material and it's spiritual. So he can convert spiritual to material. He can convert material to spiritual. So this material world, being the energies of the Lord, is not false as the impersonalists and the enemies of the Lord would propose. This material world, although temporary, is not false. It has its own validity. The impersonalists, the enemies of the Lord, the contenders of the Lord would have you believe that this material world does not exist outside of the mind of the observer. Their motto is Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. Spirit is true and matter is false. Because spirit they see as being homogeneous, undifferentiated, ineffable, and matter as being variegated. They take it that matter itself, in all of its variegatedness, is false. It only exists as a concept in the mind of the observer. The Buddhists would say a building, you call it a building, you call it a temple. But that's only temporary. It's only a temple for 100 years. But what it has been for thousands of years in the past, and what it will be for thousands of years after the temple erodes, is earth. So it's really earth. And so the argument of the Buddhists and the impersonalists is that everything comes from spirit and everything ends back into spirit. So all the variety and all the names and forms are just mental speculation, just mental concoctions. That this material world with all of its variety has no value at all. It has no more substance than a dream. However, the material world is coming from the Lord. It's the energies of the Lord, and notwithstanding the fact that it's the inferior temporary energies of the Lord, it is still valid. It has still its validity. So when a musician performs tricks on stage, don't forget, he's pulling a rabbit out of a hat, okay? It's not that the rabbit doesn't exist and the hat doesn't exist. That's not the nature of illusion. The rabbit exists, the hat exists, but the illusion is to make people think that you pulled the rabbit out of a hat. That's the illusion. Otherwise, the rabbit exists and the hat exists. So spirit exists, this material world exists, but the illusion that Krishna, that the materialists, the non-devotees suffer from, is that spirit cannot exist apart from matter. They're mistaking spirit for matter and not a true, or they're discounting matter in the favor of non-differentiated homogeneous spirit. They're making either or proposition. The fact is that Krishna is the Lord both of matter and spirit. When the materialist identifies with himself as Russian or American or male or female or black or white, what they're doing is they're showing their susceptibility to the illusory, magical potency of the Lord. The conditioned soul has got to take knowledge descending from Krishna through the chain of disciplic succession so that one can understand that although I, as an eternal spirit soul, am currently living inside of a temporary material body, I am not the body. I'm not American. I'm not black. I'm white, Christian, Indian, Jew. Through the words of the spiritual master, one can wean oneself of the illusion of misidentifying spirit with matter. Otherwise, it's inevitable that you take this material world as all in all, and then being frustrated, trying to enjoy this material world, then you reject this material world as false. It is neither all, nor is it false. It is simply the temporary energy of the Lord. And we are bewildered by the diffusion of his various multi-potencies. The clarity comes when we realize that we are part and parcel of the Lord. I am a part of the Lord, and the duty of the part is to serve him. Matter exists, spirit exists, but illusion or Maya consists in misidentifying spirit as matter. When I properly identify myself as spirit, then my illusion is finished, my bondage is past, I become free from birth, death, disease, and old age. A verse I was reading this morning is that darkness is not possible when you're standing right in front of the sun. When you're standing in the full sunlight, darkness is not possible. So it says similarly, samar darsham bhakti, sadhava samachittanam. When you're standing in front of a pure devotee of the Lord, when you're accepting his inimitable position as a confidential servitor of and an ambassador of the Lord, and when you're drinking in his words, which are free of illusion, free of competition, free of envy, when you're standing before the bona fide spiritual master, lending submissive oral reception and rendering service as is required, there is no possibility of misunderstanding. There is no possibility of being illusion and being freed from the various illusions that we've talked about through the cutting words of the spiritual master, which destroy the knots of illusion and material attachment. One stands in one's own full glory as an eternal servant, part and parcel of Krishna. Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We've got, who do we have here? We've got, beginning from the first ones to come on board, Jean, right from the get-go. Brent, Jean and Brent are always the first ones to join our little forum, followed by Rakesh, Hare Krishna, Jay, Manasaganga, Bhai Bobby, Pragna and Yogi, Hare Krishna. Binaka had a birthday, I think, just a few days ago. Haribo. And then Jean is the only one to have made a comment, and his comment is Krishna, the supreme magician. And that is, in fact, the theme that we've pursued and ruminated upon, delved into the last 23 sessions, which would have worked out to about 8 weeks all told spent on this one topic. Not sure that we're going to be able to squeeze out another session tomorrow. I'm not going to tell you one way or another. You know we're coming to the end. So either tomorrow we'll move on to a different verse, or Monday. I'll have to let you know. Tune in tomorrow. Be the first one to join on Facebook and Zoom to find out. So this will either be the culmination at 23, or we might just go for the hat trick, finish out the week with number 24. I will let you know, but that's going to be tomorrow and not today. Thanks for your stars. Thanks for your hearts. Thanks for your thumbs up. Rob, are you there with any takeaways for us?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I do have a few. So
lay them on us.
Happiness or distress, it's all a test. If Krishna wants it, nothing stops it. If Krishna is your end, you will transcend.
Jai.
Resist confusion. Krishna is untouched by illusion.
Every one of those is right to the point. So 4?
Yep.
Great. Send them over. Do you have any anything you want to say personally?
I think the stories that are told of Krishna's pastimes, the Leelas, are just, they're so amazing. They're so, they have so much wisdom in there, but then they're also so entertaining, that the way that Krishna interacts with this world and with us in this world, and that he always has a plan. He plays the long game. We play the short game. So we gotta remember to just keep at it and keep going forward, and Krishna will make sure that things always work out for us.
You'll never open the Bhagavatam or discuss the Bhagavatam with devotees and not have your mind expanded. And Krishna is just so far beyond the ability of our mind and senses to understand him, that every time we intersect with Krishna and his pastimes, his devotees, it's always mind expanding. You'll never associate with devotees. You'll never read the Bhagavatam and not come away more mature, more filled with awe and wonder at this personality of Godhead, whom we've been so fortunate to come into contact with through the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. That's my last statement for this Transcendental Tuesday morning. Thank you, one and all. We'll be back to finish out the week's sessions 23 hours from now. In the meantime, Meditate on the essence of illusion. Meditate on what it means to be illusioned and how it is that we can free ourselves from the bad illusions and surrender and put ourselves under the influence of the good illusions. But one way or another, our fate is to be illusioned, not to know everything, but to be deluded either in love for Krishna or by deluded into thinking of Krishna as less than transcendental, simply extraordinary, historical. So it's all up to us which direction we want to go. And thank God we have the path of the great self-realized souls to follow. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.